In this video, we're going to be talking about this, and this is going to be a real story about what happened in 2019 in AAA and how ultimately this used to be in my body. And if you guys don't know a ton about my professional career, so I actually broke my wrist in my 5th ever game in AAA. I don't know if you can tell the scar isn't the prettiest by any means. It looks like railroad tracks, and this is quite literally a battle wound of playing professional baseball and really trying to give it my all to be able to make it to the big leagues. And for those that don't know, I had this in my body, and this was a metal plate, and as you can tell, a very, very weak looking metal plate that used to be, you know, right there where I broke it, right? So it's kind of hard to tell because it's still kind of like in the, not necessarily in the packaging, but this was removed from my body because it's bent, all right? So it's supposed to be straight, and it is slightly bent. And that's because I actually re-broke my wrist after the doctor cleared me 3 months to the date when I first initially broke my wrist. I bent it, right? So I was doing a grip test, I was squeezing as hard as I possibly can, and because I didn't build up enough stability in my wrist in the rehab process, this was when I was with the St. Louis Cardinals, they asked me to basically squeeze as hard as I could, and because I didn't really know any better, I squeezed as hard as I possibly could because I was a competitor at that point in time, and I really didn't know any better. So I squeezed as hard as I could, and because of the lack of stability, basically that grip strength went down like this, and then out of nowhere, my wrist just kind of snapped forward, resulting in the metal plate that was in my body completely failing on me. And this was a memorable day, to say the least. I'll never forget, I went to Roger Dean, which is the spring training facility for the St. Louis Cardinals, and right before that, something in my mind told me, man, I'm hungry. I don't know if there's going to be breakfast at the facility or not. And this was in 2019, and I was rehabbing my wrist. So I went to Bagel Boys. If you're a Cardinals player, if you're a Marlins player, you know Bagel Boys is right there next to Abacoa in Jupiter, Florida. Some of the best breakfast you can get. But yeah, I went there and got a huge breakfast, my custom-made omelet, my bagel. It was just a really good, filling breakfast. And the way that that kind of ties into the story is I'll never forget the screening. So I got cleared by the doctor to finally swing the bat for the first time, and I never even really got to do that on this specific day. So I was excited, I was amped up, I thought it was going to be a really great day, and I went through all the protocol for the Cardinals, and one of the protocol is for the grip test, right? They did my internal and external rotation for my shoulder, my elbow measurements, even, you know, the flexibility in my lower half as well. Per, you know, that's just the process. And one of them was the grip test. So I did that, thinking it was like more of like a challenge for myself to gauge where I was at. And unfortunately, I just gripped too hard, not knowing any better, and I actually re-broke that wrist. And I'll never forget, like when I bent it, so like let's say like this curvature right here, so that was the curvature, but it was down here, all right? So obviously I knew something was wrong. Weirdly enough, like I got a little bit nauseous, but not too much. I always say if I didn't eat breakfast, I probably would have passed out, because seeing that on my body, not really realizing what happened, I was always thinking the best. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be fine, I'm gonna be fine. Obviously got a couple of x-rays and instantly knew it was bent. I re-broke my wrist. It kind of sounded like, I know that this might be trigger for some of you guys, but it kind of sounded like a tree branch falling off of a tree in the middle of a storm, right? You can kind of hear it start cracking at first, and then finally it went. And this is what, to be honest with you guys, like throughout my professional career, this was something, an event that really made me feel a little bit more hesitant in my abilities, right? And this was a very, very hard mental challenge to really overcome. Because obviously breaking the wrist the first time, this was in gameplay in AAA. I was trying to catch a ball in the foul territory as a third baseman, and I ran into the wall. There's probably a video of it I could put up here. And I crashed into that wall, and same thing, so much pain in my wrist. And coming back from that, obviously I had huge high hopes of returning, maybe even later that year, possibly playing some winter ball. And I'll never forget, I think it was June 15th or June 14th when I first broke it, and it was June, July, August, it was September 14th when I re-broke it. So 3 months to the day, I had high hopes of playing winter ball potentially, and that dream was kind of crushed. I continued to do rehab, throughout the entire offseason. That's when I considered Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens kind of my home, all right? So that was one of the cool aspects of going through roughly 6 months of rehab. It was definitely not fun to not see pitching for that entire time. I'll never forget also the first time I played catch. I thought that baseball was going to go right through my wrist. I didn't think I was going to have the stability to literally just like catch the ball and like keep it in place with my glove on. So there's been a lot of mental challenges that I've had to come or overcome throughout my professional career, and including in 2013, I had a grade 3 tear of my adductor, which is in my groin. That was a challenge in itself because that was my first lower body or lower extremity injury. I don't know why I just tried sounding so scientific, but that was the first time on my lower body that something, got hurt. And getting back into like running form was really, really challenging. I was in Arizona, in the Arizona heat, and that was not fun as well. But I was able to overcome that, finish the year in 2023 in AAA with the San Diego Padres. And yeah, these 3 injuries that I've had, the first wrist, the second wrist, and then, finally my adductor, that's never fun as a professional baseball player because you really truly try to understand like who you are without the sport when you're rehabbing, because those thoughts will creep up on you of like, who am I without baseball, right? And that's happened to me every single time that I broke something or tore something, in that rehab process. Like, to be honest with you, the first time that I broke my wrist, those first 3 months of rehab, I didn't do anything. I laid in bed and I felt sorry for myself. And that is probably the lowest period of time in my entire life, really, to date. And that's where I laid in bed, I felt sorry for myself, and I didn't do anything with those 3 months other than, at the time, my sister and I were sharing a car. She got it shipped out to Los Angeles, and I was in Florida with my parents in Sarasota, Florida. So I told myself, I was like, I'm gonna need a car at the very least. So I decided to buy myself a pretty cheap Volkswagen Jetta just to have something. And I started driving with Uber. And this was one of my lowest moments, to be honest with you guys. Once I re-broke that wrist though, after that 3-month period of time, something hit me and I instantly knew those 3 months simply cannot repeat themselves. I was not going to allow that. So to be honest with you, like, yes, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this metal plate that used to be in my body, on my wrist, that I don't know if you can tell, but it's slightly bent. I wanted to share with you that, but then also when I was going through that rehab process, I was in North Palm Beach. I started giving lessons, and this is honestly the birthplace of the Mendoza Baseball Academy. I know you guys probably didn't see this as a slight little turn, but truly when I was rehabbing my wrist, that is when I started realizing I am more than just a baseball player. I have the ability to give back to the community around me, and that's exactly what I was going to do. And we have Coco here, possibly going to get into the frame right here, but yeah, that second time I was rehabbing my wrist, I just really told myself I have a community I can serve by giving them instructions, giving them lessons, and that's when I did a couple of lessons, on the side. The rehab schedule, to be honest with you guys, I'm usually out of the complex around like noon or 1 o'clock, so I had a lot of the remainder of the day to give back to any students that were willing to learn from me. So that was a pretty cool introduction into the coaching world. And then obviously when I tore my adductor in Arizona, or I wasn't in Arizona, but I was rehabbing in Arizona, that's when I really decided to do the online side of things. The more I thought about it, the more I understood that if I was able to do remote, I was able to serve more people around the entire globe. And that's, where I'm at currently today. I've got roughly around 50 students inside my academy, which is really cool. 2 being in Japan, and I believe 1 or 2 in Mexico. So it's really cool that idea that I had when I was rehabbing just about a year ago, and in these moments of down periods for my professional career, I've at least been able to grab onto something positive and made somewhat of a positive impact. At least that's what I think I'm doing. As far as what I post here on social media, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, it's truly just trying to help out the younger generation make it to that next level, whether you're going from middle school ball to high school ball to college, college to pro. Hopefully some of my videos that I'm posting here I'm able to guide you through that process. Ultimately, it's that journey. Climbing up a mountain, you really, really have to understand, and this is something that I never really truly understood maybe until after the fact, but you have to enjoy the climb. You have to enjoy the climb, guys. You can't just necessarily be playing the game and enjoying all the training. You can't do all that just for the view at the top of the mountain. If you're doing it simply for that, you're not going to actually enjoy the whole journey that comes with it. And the journey is so much more powerful than the view at the top, and I promise you that. There's been so many players, and myself included, that get caught up in the view in the top that you don't enjoy the day-to-day. You don't enjoy where your feet are. And that's a huge mistake, to be honest with you guys, that I made throughout my professional career. There were many different times where I was so caught up in just trying to make it simply to the big leagues. And I lost track of the important things. You know, obviously making sure that I was being a good teammate sometimes, making sure that I wasn't getting in my own head, because to be honest with you guys, like every time that I had a couple of good games in a row, I got in my own head. And you might think like, oh, you had a good couple of games. Why are you getting in your own head? Well, because if I'm in AAA, the next step is the big leagues. That's my dream. That's the pinnacle, right? So I would get caught up into this story that I'm creating in my mind. And guys, I just want to shed some light, I guess, on how these injuries, how these down periods of my life throughout my professional career have evolved into something positive. And I'm just so thankful for you watching this video if you've made it this far, because this video is pretty much uncut. And if I haven't lost your guys' attention yet, I really do appreciate you guys sticking to the end. So with that being said, I really just wanted to share with you guys this guy because I'm doing a little bit of cleaning in my closet, and for whatever reason I had this in a bin, and it just kind of brought me into the mindset of when I found out I re-broke my wrist, and the moment where I basically told myself I was going to change. For what reason, why I needed to change, I really didn't know, but I knew in that moment I was not going to allow myself for another 3 months just to waste away my life. And that's where truly I started creating a separate Instagram account called the Mendoza Baseball Academy. I didn't really post that much. It might have been called Mendoza Baseball Lessons because it was just lessons at the time, but that's when I created a separate account. I really started posting. I started reaching out to you know, parents in the area, teams, leagues, all that fun stuff. So yeah, just looking at this guy, it brought me back to that moment in time where I really just told myself to change. Do you guys need to break a wrist or break something to tell yourself that you need to change? And I say no. Sometimes it's just a different approach, a different mindset. It's maybe a certain word that might trigger you, right? Into knowing that you do have to change something to become the player that you want to become. And not even just a player, but ultimately the person that you want to become. You do, in fact, have to change something if you want to achieve the goals you are setting out for yourself, right? So if you want to become a D1 baseball player, you do have to change something, because right now you are not a D1 baseball player. You have to physically change something to achieve that goal. And the same thing applies to if you're a college baseball player. What are you doing basically to become a professional baseball player? Because I promise you, you do have to change. For me, I changed in the traumatic event of me re-breaking my wrist, and I told myself I was going to contribute to the community in a positive way. Here we are more than a few years later, and I'm very confident and very thankful for all the community members that I've been able to generate through the value-based content that I try posting on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So with that being said, thank you guys for staying into the end, and I hope you learned something, not necessarily about how weak this small little wrist plate was. Another thing, you know, I got this surgery done in Memphis, Tennessee, and the doctor that put this tiny little thing in there, to be honest with you, I feel like this is the same plate that the 92-year-old grandma that breaks her wrist was put on, right? So like, I'm going through a lot more force. You would expect a little, you know, something a little bit bigger. And now, currently in my wrist, I have like a telescopic one that's really thick. It's really durable. To be honest with you, I just wish that was put on from the get-go. That way I wouldn't have had to endure that second setback. But everything happens for a reason. I'm just going to end it with that. Everything happens for a reason, guys. Thanks for all the support. I really, truly appreciate it.